Okay, today I'll be talking to you about a monument which is very dear to my dear to my heart. This is a Buddhist stupa at a place called Kanaganahalli in northern Karnataka. So I'll be talking about the sculptures there, especially with a view of looking at animal sculptures there. And to be very specific, I'll be looking at the elephant sculptures and the camel sculptures there, and trying to see whether these have given a clue about the identity of the artisans there. So what you're seeing here is the remains of the stupa in the main picture. And you have a few of the animal sculptures shown as a smaller picture in this title slide. So this is the way the stupa looks right now. It was buried under the earth, and it was unearthed only in the 1990s. And what you're seeing is the ruined structure of the stupa. And we'll try to first cast a general look at how the stupa would have looked like before proceeding on to the sculpture part of it. So where is Kanaganahalli? Kanaganahalli is in the Gulbarga region of Karnataka, and you can see here it's on the banks of Bhima River, which later on goes and meets Krishna. So what you're seeing here is the two sides. One is called Sannati, is a name under which this place was known earlier. Because I'll tell you why that this people get confused, because sometimes it's referred to as Sannati Stupa, sometimes it's referred to as the Kanaganahalli Stupa. These are two small villages, and I'll try to explain why this dichotomy came about in a couple of minutes. So yeah, this is the way the Bhima flows there. So the Bhima comes and takes a pronounced turn towards the north, which makes it very auspicious in certain traditions. So you put temples there, for example. So you have the Chandralamba temple here, which you see right where the temple, the river takes a pronounced turn towards the north, and then again turns to flow eastwards. Can you hear? I thought somebody was saying something. So. Okay, I'll continue. So this is where the Chandralamba temple is. It's a Hindu temple dedicated to a goddess called Chandralamba. And this is the site of the Kanaganahalli Stupa. Now, as you can see, Sannati is this village, which is on the left bank of the Bhima itself. And then you have this region where the turn comes around. There's an ancient fortified site called Ranamandala, okay, which is believed to be the habitation site at the time when the stupa was active. And then you have one stupa here. There was another stupa, brick stupa, excavated by the ASI in this village across the Bhima called Harasgundagi or Husargundagi. And there are a few other stupa mounds in this region called Anegutti, Benegutti, and all that. And the current stupa is closer to Kanaga. So Sannati was initially noticed because when I show you the brief history of the site, I'll be telling you that initially the Buddhist sculptures are noticed near the Chandralamba temple, which falls under the village Sannati. Later, when the most magnificent among the stupas here was unearthed in 1990s, that was closer to Kanaganahalli. So the villagers actually, they said that our name should be put for the site or whatever. So generally, Sannati and Kanaganahalli are two villages close to which you had a large, extensive Buddhist settlement in the 2 millennia ago. So this is how the place looks like now. This is the river Bhima. This is standing somewhere. What you're seeing here is the Chandralamba temple through this barrage here. So this dam-like structure, this barrage which came up in the late 90s, was one of the reasons which led to the discovery. I'll tell that story it's quite an entertaining story. So this is the Chandralamba temple that you can see here. It was around so initially, Sannati was known as a Shakta center because the Chandralamba temple is very famous in the region. The annual fair attracts a lot of pilgrims, and it was believed that this place is an ancient Shakta place. But even in the 1950s, K. Krishna Rao and later Sheshadri and other people, M.S. Nagaraja Rao, they all noticed in their explorations here certain sculptures that look, this is very Buddhist, right? You have the Vajrasana and the Buddha Pada here. So they felt that there must have been a flourishing Buddhist center at some point of time. Okay, so this is one of the early sculptures reported by Sheshadri, I think in 1954 or something from this, near the Chandralamba temple. And even today, if you wander in this region, it's a very rich, relatively less explored archaeological region. And you find this is a Madigi village nearby. You see loose sculptures lying under the, in the bushes, like when they should be actively conserved and kept inside a museum somewhere. You have a lot of, if you travel in the villages nearby, you have a lot of memorial stones with the Chaitya arch shown in the top. You know that this is a Buddhist memorial stone. And there are even inscriptions which talk about the person being commemorated in Brahmi Lipi in some of these stones. You can see the one here. This is in nearby Kollur village, and this one is right on the site in Sannati, etc. This is in a place called Anabi. Coming back to the Chandralamba temple situation here, in the 1980s, around 1989 or so, the roof of one of the subsidiary shrines in this temple, the Kalikamba shrine, collapsed, and the beautiful idol of Kalikamba, which was housed inside, was broken into several pieces, 4 pieces. 3 you can see here, 1 piece is missing in this picture. So obviously a broken idol cannot be worshipped, so they set about renovating the shrine. And when they renovated the shrine, it led to the discovery of a very strange, very unexpected discovery, an Ashokan edict. Okay, several edicts rather. So the Pitha, or the pedestal on which the image was kept, was found to be covered in writing on the reverse as well as on the obverse. So this you can see, this slot is where the tenon of the idol used to fit in. And this is where the Abhisheka water used to flow out and all that. And they found that it's covered with writing. And when it was examined closely, it was found that it contained 4 of Ashoka's edicts, mainly the few lines of Rock Edict 12 and 14, and the 2 separate edicts which are found only in Dhauli and Jaugala. So apart from that, they, when the excavations commenced, they also found this sandstone lion. You can see here. It's a very Mauryan looking object. It's a broken, obviously you can see bits of the mane here, and it's a seated lion, probably on top of a pillar on the direction, in the direction of the settlement at Ranamandala. And it's very strange that you find sandstone here, because the local stone, which you find all over the place in the neighborhood, is the limestone of the Bhima Basin. Even today, you find a lot of quarries being worked to obtain the limestone for construction and all that. And you don't find sandstone anywhere in the region. So this very obviously is a import into the region during the time of the stupa, probably. And so this is what the stupa looks like. Okay, you can see here one of the Buddha padas in the foreground and the remains of the stupa in the background. So it started maybe around 2nd century BCE and lasted till the 3rd century CE. And the construction, it was enlarged in at least 6 phases over 3 periods. And it was started as a small stupa, a single level, small mound of limestone rubble and earth during the Mauryan period. And it was further enlarged and embellished to the level that you see it today during the Shatavahana period of Shatavahana rule rather. So yeah, so when this construction of the stupa started, the initial sculpture, and even in the Shatavahana phase, you'll find that they represent the Buddha in aniconic form. And in the later phase, when the Mahayana phase has also come over, you find that Manushi Buddhas have also been added in the circumambulatory pathway and all that. Now, I've been reading recently, I'm no expert on Buddhism, but I've been reading recently that this dividing it into just this Theravada or Hinayana phase and the Mahayana phase may not be very accurate, because there were many Nikayas and probably the scene is more complicated. But I just wanted to say that the stupa's life encompassed the an iconic representation of the Buddha, as we saw in that early slab which I showed you, and later Manushi Buddhas were also incorporated into the sculptural scheme at the stupa. So this is how it looks like today, the ruins. And I like I told you, I spent some really memorable time there documenting it on and off at the site over a period of 4 years, from 2009 to 2012. So my job there was to document the stupa. In those days, we did not have drones. So it involved climbing a small ladder, which was around 15-16 feet high, and documenting the each and every slab of the stupa, and also from a much more precarious 27-foot high ladder to produce pictures like these, you know, where you get the entire. Today, I think it can be done so easily, whereas we had to work quite in primitive conditions in that early phase, and also aerial views of the stupa, which you can see things like this. So this is from the ASI report, excavation report published by Dr. K.P. Poonacha, where so you can see this is how the structure looked like. This is the main stupa, which is in an inscription uncovered on the side. It is referred to as the Adhalaka Mahachaitya. And it has got 4 entries, like a circumambulatory pathway, and 4 entries roughly in the cardinal directions, off by around 15 degrees. And there are many other what is classified as votive stupas and other structures around the main stupa, and a couple of monastery, the basements of certain brick basements of the monasteries have also been discovered here. So this is how the structure looks like I'll just try to explain it to you. So you have the railing, which goes, like everybody knows, which encompasses the stupa. And some of the places, the tabas and suchis are in relatively good condition, but most of them are broken and leaning outwards. And then you have the Pradakshina Patha, the circumambulatory path, which goes around it. And the stupa, in the later phase of the Shatavahana control here, developed into something with two levels, which there is a lower drum. It's a stepped cylinder. So you have a lower drum of a larger diameter. And this lower drum has 4 ritual platforms known as the Ayaka platforms in the roughly 4 cardinal directions, like I showed you there. And then you have an upper drum, which is also sheathed in slabs here. And then above that, there was a dome, which is unfortunately missing today. So it's like 2 cylinders. And in between the 2 cylinders, there is this, which looks a false Pradakshina Patha, elevated Pradakshina Patha, like the one you have in Sanchi, where you can actually ascend to that level. Here, it was only a false one. It basically functioned as a flower receptacle, as I will show you in a little while. So apart from these components that I showed you, on top of the railing, you had these coping stones, which were covered in animal sculptures, which I'll be coming to in a little while. And then above the upper drum slabs, to weight it down, you had these frieze stones also, which were also covered with animal sculptures, which I think we'll see it here. So these are the plans published by ASI in the excavation report. This is the stupa as it looks like currently. So you have the missing dome and the upper cylinder that you can see here, covered in with rubble and limestone rubble and earth. And then you have your Ayaka platforms in these 4 directions that you see here, the Pradakshina Patha and the railing around, and the entries with Chandrashila and Silla and all that, which led from all 4 directions into it. So taking a cross section through the stupa, so you have your railings with the upright tabas and the lenticular looking suchis, the crossbars, which were going all across. And on the top, you had a heavy coping stone. And the coping stone had pictures of real and mythical animals proceeding from the right to the left, which shows the devotee in which direction he has to circumambulate the stupa once he enters, and he or she enters into the Pradakshina Patha. And then you have the lower drum slab here, which is the lower drum is covered with limestone slabs, some of which had carvings. And on top of it, you have this Pushpa Grahini, or the false circumambulatory, which actually was a flower receptacle. And it had a cornice here at the corner, which had some railing-like sculptures on it. And then there you have the upper drum slab, which is inserted down here, and a collar stone is kept to lock it into place. And to weight it down from above, you had the animal phrase, which again showed animals proceeding from the right to the left to show the direction of circumambulation. So, and then the dome, the anda, started from here and proceeded above, which we can't see right now, for example. So this is how the lower drum looked like. You can see the earth filling inside. This is the limestone masonry here. And then they had brickwork and rubble. And you had the limestone facing it here. And the upper circumambulatory, which you can see here, which actually functioned as a flower receptacle, is kept here. You can see the railing sculptures on the front of the Pushpa Grahini, or Pushpa Grahini as it is called in Prakrit. And you can see where it has collapsed down. So the ledge-like thing which went across. So it probably was something like, you were, even today, if you go to Buddhist stupas where worship is allowed, like the remains of the Dharmarajika stupa in Sarnath, you find devotees laying lily flowers and all that here. So probably this is where because in the literature, the inscriptions, it is called Pushpa Grahini. So we assume that people used to put floral offerings like this onto the ledges here. So the sculptures at Sannati are quite wonderful because they are in shallow relief. They are only probably about less than an inch in relief, or maybe at the maximum slightly more than an inch. But you have, this is the Muchilinda Naga, the Nagaraja who offered the Buddha protection as he was in the process of getting enlightened. And there are several reproductions of it. This one is the biggest one on a lower drum slab facing the western entry, which probably was the main entry. And there are many scenes from the sculptural representations there mostly deal with either the life of the Buddha, like you can see here the birth of the Buddha. You can see Maya Devi, his mother. Buddha, of course, is not shown in real form. You can see the footstep, the 7 steps that he's supposed to have taken immediately after birth has been represented at the bottom here. Then you have the great setting forth when Gautama leaves palace and proceeds to the forest. So you can see here again, there is no physical representation of the Buddha, but you can see Kantaka, the horse, his horse, and Channa, the groom, accompanying him. The parasol shows that a royal personality is moving around here. You can see the city behind, that's nicely represented in perspective here. And according to legend, Yakshas held up the hooves of Kantaka so that the city wouldn't wake up. When the city slumbered, Gautama set forth into the forest. And the same, another panel, the same slab shows how dejected, totally dejected, the horse and groom, Kantaka and Channa, are coming back. And he's showing, the groom is showing the jewelry and the hair that he cut off, Gautama cut off at the Niranjara river and off to his parents, to King Shuddhodana and his wife. So these pictures, unfortunately, taken from the top of the ladder, do not do any justice to the actual workmanship of the place. So I'll just show you a small detail, the detail of Kantaka, the horse, taken in good light. So you can see the amount of detail that goes into the sculpture. Like I told you, it's in very shallow relief, but you can see the bridle and in the striations in the bridle rope that is going across, and the hair of the horse's mane and the teeth, very beautifully. All these sculptures are in so much detail. Unfortunately, when you take a zoomed out view, you cannot show the detail in detail always. So then other things that you see here are Jataka stories. So this is the Dakka Rakshasa, the Rakshasa story, in which there's a demon inside a pond. And one of the leader of the monkey troop, which wanted, very thirsty and wanted to drink from the, you can see the demon here among the, the lotus leaves and all that. And then the device are drinking straw out of bamboos, and so that nobody gets caught and all that. So one of the Jataka stories here. So that many of the Jataka stories are depicted on the lower as well as the upper drum slab, mainly the upper drum slabs. And then you have monarchs, real as well as mythical ones. So this one, the lower one, is actually the a Bodhi. It's from the inscription we know that it's a Bodhisattva known as Somaratha. And upper one is a very famous person. Of course, you know whom I'm going to talk about. There's an inscription. In case you don't know, it says Raya Ashoko. And this is the only inscribed portrait of the emperor anywhere in which has been obtained. There are many other, there are some representations believed to be Ashoka in Sanchi and other places, maybe even Amaravati. But this is the only one where is referred to not as Devanampiya Piyadasi, but as Ashoka itself, Raya Ashoko in Brahmi Lipi. And here he is, the face of the great emperor himself. So there are many of the Shatavahana kings are also shown in this in the sculptural scheme. So apart from that, you have animal sculptures also in the shown here, which is real as well as mythical. You have wild boars shown mostly on the coping stone and the animal frieze which I showed you. There are mythical animals like winged lions or whatever you want to call them. There are camels, there are gazelles or antelopes or whatever you call them. And there are these Iha Mrigas or creatures of fantasy, like, this lion with a wing and a fish's tail. And there are many others, which, you can see this horned lion being ridden by a person here. So, and then there are elephants. Now, I'm very fascinated by elephants, and Sannati is a wonderful place to see elephant sculptures because they have so many of them. I'll just show you where these elephant sculptures occur. So I'll be looking at elephant and camel sculptures here, and then I'll tell you how they seem to offer a clue about the kind of identity the artisans might have had. So you have this elephant, you find elephants on the coping of the railing, like you can see here in this procession from right to left, 2 elephants and 2 lions here. You find them on the lower drum slab. This is one of the few slabs which are blank. It is conjectured that the blank slabs are probably painted over, because they found traces of slabs, paint in a few of the blank slabs here. And they usually have this pilaster which conceals the joint, and the pilaster on the top of it, you have this elephant represented here. Now you just notice that this temporal gland here between the eye and the ear, there seems to be some fluid coming down from there, which is usually when the elephant is in a state of musth, which we will discuss in detail later. So it is this small thing that you see here, which is basically this elephant which has been carved here. Then you also see them on the Ayaka slabs. There were friezes on the perimeter of the Ayaka slab. There you have, this one represents the Sharira Vibhago, or the what do you call, the distribution of the transport of the relics of the Buddha to the various stupa sites mentioned in the legend of the Buddha. Then you find the upper drum slabs are by far the best what do you call, sculpted. And there you have elephant representation. In fact, out of 60 slabs which are there, about a third, around 19 slabs, okay, are contain imagery of elephant. So elephant featured very prominently in the sculptural scheme at the Kanaganahalli Stupa. And then you find them above the upper drum slab, the frieze stone also had elephant, which are shown here. So we can look at this and to understand how well the sculptor, or the sculptors rather, had control over the theme of their sculptures. They show the elephants in their natural habitat, at least in one situation. And then there's a lot of information about elephant handling and behavior, which we can understand that 2000 years ago, people were doing certain practices which we can see even today happening in states like Kerala, for example, where elephants are used in religious situations. And then you see the elephant also as a religious symbol and in ritual. So we'll look at it under these three heads broadly. So about the natural history, I think some of the best sculpture, I've been looking at elephant sculptures all over India in various places, and I think one of the best sculptures I've seen of an elephant is this one on one of the Ayaka friezes. Again, a representation of the transport of the relics. You can see that virtually every bump and every hollow on the elephant's what do you call, in the elephant's anatomy is reproduced very faithfully, and that too in very tiny relief of less than half an inch or something here in this case. And I'll show you another example from an upper drum slab. On the right, you see this depiction of what I think is a depiction of an ideal war elephant. And the war elephant is shown in a state of musth here. But you can see here the elephant, the pronounced forehead bump in the middle of the forehead, which is known as the Vayukumbham in Malayalam. It's been shown here, and you can see the way the eye, the orbit of the eye is also nicely depicted, the way the ear folds over as the elephant ages, and the wavy outline of the ear. Everything is reproduced very faithfully. And then just to show you another example, this one is one of the Ayaka friezes, which shows the birth of the Buddha here. In the middle, the enlightenment, and it's called Mara Vijaya because, Mara and his army was trying to prevent the Buddha from reaching enlightenment, and he overcomes that to become the Buddha. And then this one is the Dharma Chakra Pravartana, when he sets the first sermon or whatever. So three important milestones in the life of the Buddha. And here you see, usually the Mara's army is shown with fierce-looking faces, and Mara's daughters trying to tempt the Buddha. And there's an elephant always shown in Mara's army, which is also there in some of the Buddhist literature, which talks about the scene of Mara Vijaya. And just a close-up of that elephant that you see here, which is wound its trunk around the tusk, and you compare it with an elephant in a similar situation. You can see the forehead bump from the frontal view of it, and the ears, everything carved so beautifully. And this thing would be less than 6 inches in, from top of the head to the bottom of the trunk, and it's been carved so faithfully. And just in case you think that they were only able to carve these things in shallow relief, there is this component, which I think is a finial element probably, which is at the top of the stupa, which is unfortunately only part of it is obtained in the excavation. You can see how beautiful, and this object is also less than 6 inches in height. And you can see how an angry elephant in one trying to tusk somebody is shown in such great three-dimensional detail. So it shows that they were master sculptors when it came to depicting the elephant and the horses, as you saw in the case of Kantaka, Buddha's horse. Now, looking at the other aspect of the natural history of the elephants, I'll just go to 3 upper drum slabs which depict the story, Jataka story of the 6-tusked elephant, which was the Buddha in a previous birth, a Bodhisattva. It is called the Chaddanta Jataka or Shadjanta Danta Jataka. It's basically the Chaddanta is the elephant with 6 tusks, and the story in very brief is that he was the king of elephants, and he was sporting in this pool, as you can see, with 2 of his wives, Mahasubhadra and Chula Subhadra. So, for brief details, I will not go into the younger wife, Chulla feels slighted by the attentions of the Bodhisattva to his senior wife, and she dies and she gets reborn as the queen of Varanasi, which you can see in the upper panel of the same slab. And then she devises a scheme where she tells her husband, the king of Varanasi, to kill the Buddha, kill the six-tusked, the Bodhisattva, the elephant, and bring the tusk to her. So they commissioned this hunter called Sonuttara. Unfortunately, the upper slab here is damaged, and the lower one you can see that Sonuttara is trying to saw off the tusks of the great elephant, and he is unable to do it, and the elephant himself saws it off for him. And then and he dies, and the hunter takes the tusks and goes to the, you can see the city gates of Varanasi here, and the hunter, the great tusks, he be carrying it on a big, slinging it from a pole kind of a thing. And when he presents it to the wife, she feels very sad and she dies of broken heart, following which her husband also dies of a broken heart, which anyway, this is the first slab, and you can see how beautifully it has been depicted. Monica Zinn, in her book on the upper drum slabs of this place, says that the sculptor who worked on this must have been a master sculptor. And you can see how the elephant has been depicted, the beautiful way in which the cheeks are tucked in. And it's not an easy job to depict six tusks, and he has done that pretty well. The female elephant with the little tushes have been shown here. So these are different views of the same slab. And this is a scene in which Sonuttara is sawing off the tusks of the elephant. And this is the final conclusion where you can see him display the tusk to the queen, who is, you can see how the sadness has been portrayed on the face here by the sculptor in this limited volume available to him to sculpt. So from there, then other thing you see here that in Kanaganahalli, most of the elephants are in musth. Now, what you can see here about musth, what I'm saying is that the gland, a temporal gland, which is somewhere between the ear and the eye. From there, you have the musth flowing out. This is a periodical, annual, usually in elephants, a condition in which there's a lot of testosterone in the bloodstream of the animal, and it's very aggressive. And which in the wild, it allows it a greater chance to mate with females and spread its genes or whatever. But in the ancient Indian institution of having a war elephant, this is very important to have an elephant. If it is in a state of musth, it is aggressive, usually to the detriment of the enemy, but sometimes it can wreak havoc on your own forces also, as some accounts of the war elephants tell. Thomas Trotman has a very good study on the Indian elephant, the institution of the war elephant. Yeah. So here you can see that there are two upper drum depictions, which are very beautifully done. And you can see the musth fluid is coming down and streaking the cheeks of the animal and flowing down to the very bottom of the chin, which is usually in the final stages of musth. And here you can see that streaking the sides and entering into the mouth. Okay, it's a very wonderful study of an elephant in musth. So yeah, here you can see this one is a depiction of the king Shatakarni, the Shatavahana king Shatakarni, donating silver lotuses to the monks of probably this very stupa. And whenever they show a king in the upper panel, below they show his royal mounts. So here there is an elephant accompanied by a small female elephant, and there is a royal horse shown here. And there's another situation in which, so you can see a close-up here, and Shatakarni's royal mount seems to be in a state of musth. And here, this is a depiction of the ideal Chakravarti, or the wheel-turning monarch, who, so the ideal Chakravarti has 7 jewels, the 7 jewels of the, including courtier, wife, general, and then you have the Dharma Chakra, the elephant and the horse, and all that is shown here. The elephant shown here is again shown in a state of musth. So the ideal elephant, the war elephant, which, I mean, the elephant was crucial to ancient Indian armies, and they were the equivalent of your Patton tanks or whatever. And the elephant cavalry was a very important thing. And the elephant being in a state of musth is a common thing which is told in Sanskrit poetry from that time. Even in later times, you find it. Akbar, for instance, is rumored to have a war elephant, which, when it hears the drums of battle, it would erupt into a state of musth. Probably an exaggeration, most definitely an exaggeration maybe. But even if elephants could not be, I mean, musth is a natural phenomenon. You can't induce it, but you could induce an aggression in it by giving it liquor, which is something what the kings of the Deccan, the early Chalukyan kings, in the account by Xuanzang, say that their armies which consists of mahouts who got drunk themselves and induced their chargers also to have liquor. So they would be in a state of aggression during the war. And now, if you compare this profile view that the Sannati crafts person has so wonderfully depicted, you compare it to a real elephant. I mean, I've taken this picture in a festival in Kerala temple there. You can see how nicely they have depicted the elephant in its profile view. And you can also notice that usually all the elephants that are shown there are tuskers. You don't find, there are also big, aggressive, healthy males which without tusk called, in Kerala we call them Mora. And it's also known as the, I think it's called the Makhna in Hindi. So, ancient Sanskrit literature from Mahabharata and various others says, one of the characteristics of an elephant is that it should be Sudanta, endowed with a very long and wonderful pair of tusks. And that seems to be the way the ideal war elephant being depicted. All the lakshanas of an ideal war elephant is seen in this and other sculptures. And then, of course, this deteriorates through a trope. Like I told you, everybody talks about elephants being in musth and bees mistaking it for nectar and buzzing around the head of the elephant and all that in Sanskrit poetry. Similarly, in sculpture too, it seems to have become a trope. Some of these things are very carelessly drawn. You can see just 2 streaks drawn here. And what takes the cake is this terrible looking 3 scratches, hastily done scratches on the cheek of the elephant. So that musth elephant became more degenerated to something like a trope in later phases of the. You should also remember that the stupa was enlarged twice at least. And when it enlarges, you need more upper drum slabs, you need more coping stones. And some of the later ones do not have the same quality as the other ones. You can see the detailed discussion of this in the book by Monica Zinn. So now, again, looking at behavior and handling, this Ayaka Free is showing the transport of relics of the Buddha. You see 7 elephants here. 8th one is obviously was in sight and did not need to be transported. And you can see the way I love the way the sculptor has depicted the elephants. Each one is playing with its trunk. One has wound it around the tusk. Another one is trying to sniff for maybe take the fodder from some other elephant or whatever. So you can see the close-up, how beautifully each elephant has been treated. And if you go to any pageant in Kerala and all that today, things like this have been happening for 2000 years at least in the subcontinent. Okay, and here also you can see that only elephants with tusks are usually used for the ceremonies. Similarly, all these are also tusked elephants. You do not find female elephants or you don't find tuskless males depicted in any of the sculptures here. And then this is a wonderful sculpture because it shows a war. Probably there's a war over the relics which have been talked about here. And in the bottom, you can, as well as in the top panel, you can see war elephant as well as the horse cavalry, which you can see here, also foot soldiers. So the Chaturanga army, that the 4 legs of the army, which was basically the infantry, the elephant cavalry, the horse as well as the chariot, is depicted, is shown here. The chariot is not shown, but the horse, the elephant cavalry and the foot soldiers are shown here. And if you look at the close-up of this, you can actually see, I mean, we have never seen wars happening on elephants, right? So this one shows there's a mahout with an ankusha who's trying to control the elephant. There's an archer who sits, and there are at least 4 quivers and maybe 4 on the other side where we're full of arrows. And there's a person, an assistant, who pulls out arrows from the quiver and hands to the archer. So you can see the things being shown here. There's another depiction which shows basically, which is broken here. We can see a person sitting on an elephant. And it's interesting, if you look at the close-up, you can see that the person is, there's a rope from the harness preventing the fellow from falling off. And also please note the way he has kept the elephant, the rider at the rear of the elephant, the way he tucks up his legs here. Okay, you can see it here too. You cannot sit with your legs like you sit on the pillion of a scooter on an elephant, because the elephant's back starts sloping from here. And if you sit here, you'll just fall off. So even today, the guy who sits at the back of the elephant tucks his legs up in the same way that you can see here, which is shown on the, so it shows how conversant the sculptor was with the subject of elephants. Okay, and this one shows one of the Jataka stories, the Kusha Jataka. I will not go into the details of that. Okay, there also you can see the elephant being controlled by the Ankusha, which is in use among mahouts even today, 2000 years later. And this one is king, another Shatavahana king, Pulumavi, donating Ujjaini to Ajayata, another king there. And you can see whenever, like I told you, whenever king is shown, his mount is shown below, and you have the the horses as well as the elephant shown here. Here too, the Mahout is controlling the elephant using an ankusha. And there's one lower drum slab which is called the Bhava Chakra panel, showing all the sins of mankind and all that. And there, it's very interesting to see an elephant chariot or an elephant cart drawn by two elephants here. I just thought I'll show that because a very unusual use to me, at least, seeing elephants drawing a chariot. And then, of course, as a religious symbol, obviously everybody knows about the story of how Buddha's mother, Siddhartha's mother, sees a dream in which an elephant, unfortunately, this slab is broken, the lower register of it. You can see here, you can see the queen here and the attendants of the queen. And there's an elephant coming in her dream, the white elephant, which you can see here. Close up of the elephant, you can see here in better light. Okay, so then, of course, you had Mara Vijaya shown on upper drum slab, where you see the Bodhi tree, the Buddha is represented by the empty seat and the Buddha Pada below here. And Mara's army consisting of an elephant also coming. And in this case, he seems to be picking up one of the members of Mara's army itself. So I didn't really understand this particular panel. You can see the elephant here grabbing the unfortunate guy. And here again, the Vishwantara Jataka or the Vesantara Jataka, where a king, basically who is generous to a fault, who donates the elephant which used to bring rain to his country, and he gets expelled on that account and all that, and goes into exile. There again, you can see the elephant. This is the elephant which used to, cause rains to be in whichever country it went to. So there's a lot of elephant representation that I was telling you here. And also as the support for the Dharma Chakra, there are several Dharma Chakra depictions in Sannati. And two of them have, like you can see, these two have elephants holding up the chakra here. You can see the closer view of the sculpture here. And then, of course, in the later phase of the stupa, you have the incident of Nalagiri, the maddened elephant that Buddha's cousin Devadatta sends to kill him. But the elephant just comes and bows down and submits to Buddha, which is seen here. It's not that well carved because it's a later period sculpture. Then you have this very interesting thing where the relics of the Buddha being transported is also shown on, there are multiple depictions of it on Ayaka slab, on the, this one is on the two upper drum slabs. You can see the two here. Both of them show the relics of the Buddha being transported. And you can see the relics are in this urn here. I think I may have close-ups. Yeah, so you see that this is of this particular thing. And the relics are being carried on the head of the elephant by the rider. And there's another Chamaradhari, the person with a fly whisk of a yak's tail or whatever, fanning the thing ceremonially. And even today, if you go to pageants in Kerala, of course in the Hindu context here, where the idol of the festival idol of the deity whose festival is happening here, there's an umbrella, of course, which you see everywhere for royal as well as divine personalities. And you have what is called the Ven Chamaram or the white chamara. It's almost a replica of what is happening in the Sannati depictions of 2000 years ago. And now that we had a fill of elephants, we'll turn to camels. Okay, so you can see that camels again are shown on the coping over the railing. Interesting thing here is that this camel has got two humps. Now, anybody who's gone to our Indian context in Rajasthan knows that you have camels, one hump dromedary camels here. And certainly there were no camels in Karnataka where this was being sculpted. So you see this camel with two humps. It is, I mean, it's a fairly okay sculpture. But then you have this, one of the lower drum slabs above which, above the pilaster of which you have two camels sitting back to back in many of these depictions here. It also has two tiny humps shown here. Little bit of hair you can see here, a mane kind of thing, and some on the neck here, but not that very well carved. Okay, and then you have upper drum depictions of, I mean, here you have a person being carried on a palanquin, a royal personality by the parasol that has been carried here. Another personality on a camel-drawn chariot, which you can see here, again a royal personality because of the umbrella or the parasol being carried here. So these are again two humped camels. Like you can see here, there are two humps are very clearly visible. Now we don't know the meaning of this scene. What people have been conjecturing is that this is probably talking about the missionaries Majjhima and Mulaka Deva and all that, who are going from the Kalatika mountains to the Himalayan region to spread the Dharma. And because it is kept between slabs denoting the Kalatika mountains as well as the Yakshas and Garudas of the Himalaya. So they're shown camel-drawn chariots here. But even here, you will find that the camels are not that greatly, not that well depicted. Okay, you can just see the two humps here. It's almost like a saddle kind of thing which they've created here. And then the animal free is over the upper dome slab. Here also you have these two camels shown. Both of them have two humps, but the humps are shown very, it's almost like a cartoon, right? It's not, I mean, remember the elephant sculptures, how loyal or how faithful to the elephant anatomy it was. And look at these camels looking like cartoons. I mean, you can excuse saying that these are only the friezes and the coping stones, but then look at the upper drum slab too. There too, it was very clear that the person is not that familiar with the camel. Okay. So let us compare this with Sanchi. Okay. In Sanchi, the stupa, the Toranas which came in the later period, we are interested in the Toranas here. So let us look at the eastern Torana, the inner surface of it, which you can see here. And these are some of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. In that, you see these little places where they seem to have depictions of camels. We'll see other pictures of it. So this is where the crossbars are there. You have the adoration of the Buddha depicted here in an iconic form by the animals of the forest, the elephants and all that here. And you have all kinds of things in the intermediate scenes where mythical animals being ridden by people. And here you have camels being ridden by people. So you can see the two pictures. I think I have better, clearer pictures. Yeah, you can see this guy whipping the camel here. And here there's a man and a woman both riding on camels. You can see in both these pictures here, you can see that there are two humps being shown here. And the rider is seated between the two humps. And here too, you can see that there are two humps being shown here. So, yeah, this is another picture of that crossbar with the two things. And you can see the camels in quite detail. Now, compare this with the Kanaganahalli sculptures. You know that the main, at the elbows of the hair at the elbows of the camel, as well as the hair along the underside of the neck and the mane have been shown very beautifully here. And this one also shows it quite nicely depicted compared to what you see in Kanaganahalli. So this obviously is a Bactrian camel. I mean, so-called Bactrian camel. It's in various, northwestern region. You can see it in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So it is not the camel that you find in Rajasthan, the dromedary that is being depicted here very clearly. You can see the woolly mane being shown. This is taken from this website, which shows the characteristics of the camel here. So there is no doubt that whatever has been depicted here and what has been attempted to be depicted in Kanaganahalli is the Bactrian camel and not the dromedary camel of further south down. Okay, now, does this mean that the sculptor who depicted these things here came from the land of the Bactrian camel? You know that Gandhara had quite a few stupas, and Gandhara region also has a lot of what I've not visited any stupa there, but what I have read about is that the depiction of the transport of the relics, at least in a few cases, has the relics being carried on camels, the two-humped camels there in the Gandhara, in some of the Gandharan stupas. Or relics from there. So we know for sure that, for example, this is the Brahmagiri Ashokan edict, which is carved on the surface of this rock. This is a protective structure which has been erected around it. So this, I don't think you can see it here, but maybe here you can see it a little bit. The Brahmagiri edict has, we know that the scribe which engraved this thing hailed from Gandhara. We know his name, it's Chapada. From he signed, though the body of the edict is in Brahmi, he's inscribed his title, the Lipika Arena, that part is written in Kharoshti script to give his identity as a person from Kharoshti speaking land. So this, we know for sure that there were scribes from Gandhara who were there. So is it possible that people who made those sculptures of camels there are from Gandhara? It doesn't look like they're very the familiarity with which they have carved the elephant. Maybe there was a team of sculptors from different lands which were engaged in sculpting the slabs there. But it does look like the person who is sculpted the Bactrian camel had never seen it. Okay, so this is, I just got it from this website. It shows it is supposed to show. I've got this description here. which talks about the rider carrying a reliquary, Buddha's relics, riding a camel shown in profile. Now it says that, I mean, it's a damaged piece, but it says the camel has shaggy hair down the front of its neck. And it does look like two humps have been shown in rudimentary form. So this is a Gandharan artifact. So from this, it comes to the conclusion that I think I can draw is that I was reading this book by Professor Shetter, who was a colleague. He was working here in NIAS till 2020. Unfortunately, he passed away in beginning of 2020. This is the last book that he published. I don't know whether you can see it in the thing here. It's called Early Buddhist Artisans and Their Architectural Vocabulary. It's a wonderful book if anybody can. It's published by Manipal University Press again. And he talks about the different vocabularies used in the inscriptions there. And he talks about this category of artisans called Navakamis, okay, and Aveshanis, in which the Navakarmi or Navakami is basically, I mean, these are people who are very well versed with the Nikayas, who were monks actually, but they oversaw, they knew about the specification needed for building stupas and what iconography to put in and all that, but they did not physically work on the stupas. And even the Aveshanis were more like foremen who did not physically done, but they oversaw work. So it's quite possible that, you know, the Navakami who conceived of this culture and the other things that are from Gandharan region, and the sculptors were local sculptors who had never seen the beasts. So though they could do a wonderful job carving, you know, elephants, but they couldn't really carve a convincing camel when it came to, you know, depicting these animals or whatever. Okay, so that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about in this thing here. Of course, most of my the plans and sections and other things have been taken from the ASI excavation report for Kanaganahalli by Dr. Punacha, and it's available for purchase from ASI. And it's a wonderful, it's got all these cultures and more. And in fact, it has the photographs of the place before excavation and all the intermediate artifacts and all that. So it's like a treasure trove. Other than this and Monica Zin's book about the upper drum slabs, I don't think there's any much literature book form which is available. And of course, Professor Shetter's book. And before I end, I want to remember Azim Bhai, who was a caretaker at Kanaganahalli. I cannot think of Kanaganahalli without remembering Azim Bhai, who took care of the place like very possessively and kept it in very fine metal, even found some of the missing pieces and some of the sculptures. And he was, of course, a grand host whenever we visited Kanaganahalli. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. So I would like to dedicate this talk in his memory. And thank you very much for your attention.